You're welcome to use it if you, we're not going to be the mask movers here, I can tell you that. But are you ready to go?
Yeah, and the restrooms are,
Oh yeah, restrooms are back here. And we do have a sign-up sheet over here too.
we have trees.
And Dan brought some trees.
So we're rolling.
Okay, call the meeting to order. You can rise for the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. James?
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Guide us through these troubling times with sickness and disparity and all the other natures of human problems that occur due to being cooped up and cabin fevered. Pray that everyone can maintain their sanity, their health, and their good mental state. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Item 3 is the roll call members. Dan?
Okay, roll call, last meeting of the year. Coe,
Here.
Bierke,
Here.
Driscoll, Jovic,
Here.
Donegal,
Here.
Williams,
Here.
Matt,
Here.
Bialotta,
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Okay, all present, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of this agenda tonight. Is there any changes to be made from any of the board members? Seeing none, I'll have a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Moved by Tom, second.
Second.
Second by Dan Driscoll. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item number 5, approval of the minutes from the November meeting. I guess, Linda, it's you're beside it. Do you have any comments? There were a couple write-ins, I noticed.
Yeah, if you happen to get an old version, it's possible you didn't get the corrections. It was,
Okay, on page 7, agenda item 12, the original, it said Bialotta said they have some of them didn't include the word safety issue, but that got inputted. And there was another correction on who voted yes or no on motion 9, and that has been corrected as well.
Anything else?
What was the first part she said? I can't hear her.
Pardon me?
What was the first part she said? I cannot hear her.
Okay, page 7, the last line. Does yours say have a safety issue?
Yes.
Okay, so you have a correct copy.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Moved by Dan Driscoll, second.
Second.
Second by Nathan. Right? Nathan, yeah. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item number 6 is our standard conflict of interest disclosure. Are there any items on the agenda tonight that any board member would have a conflict? Seeing none, okay. Move on to the treasurer's report then. We got our new treasurer, Ron Coth, on board. Took up Robert's seat over here. So you have the floor.
Well, I'm going to defer to have Administrator Mullally go through that as he usually does.
certainly. It's obviously towards the end of the year, so we have a pretty good idea where we stand. Plug it up again, sorry. So we're, projected revenue is about $211,000. We're up to about $207,000. We have a little bit yet to expect. And I guess for On appropriations, we're under budget for administrative stuff, so we got a little extra there, but we're a little above budget, over budget on projects, but I'll just skip down here to probably what you're more interested in is in red. Our unpaid project obligations, which are in this table, which is hard to read unless you have a printout, are about 78,000. And so, using that and the fact that there's a little bit of admin yet that we're going to have to dish out about 5,100. At the start of the year, we can expect to have about 506,000. And remember, our tax levy that we approved is about 219,000, so that will be what we'll have coming in over the 2021 period. Any questions?
Any questions for Dan?
Motion to approve.
Motion by James. Is there a second? Who seconded? Bob. Seconded by Bob. William? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Brings us to item number 8, presentation of the final report by Banner. Bob, you want to introduce the item?
Sure. It's been my pleasure to work with Dr. Chapman for several months now. I was on the committee to look into this issue, and I've read through our final report, which I hope all of you have too. Very professionally done. I wanted to also thank Zachary for the
Cheryl's getting ready to
Zoom
get up here,
meeting.
so I'll
Never done that
put
before.
you on speaker.
Thank you very much. Take care.
And I'll put you by this
Thank you,
mic.
Dr. Chapman. As soon as he's done setting up, have it.
And I have Jay Gilbertson from East Dakota Water Development District on the line here. So Jay, if you're not talking, you might want to mute, but you're coming over the PA system here. If you want to just say something, we'll make sure.
All right, sounds good. Am I coming through?
Yeah.
All right, I'll go on mute then.
Well, good evening, everyone, and Dan will put up a few slides this evening to go with the final report, and just want to talk about some of the new items in this final report, because over the last several months we've talked about the basis for the work of bringing together and seeing what stakeholders in western South Dakota feel about looking at Missouri River water to supplement current water resources that they may have in their communities, in their rural water systems, and the like. And are you okay if I take off my mask to speak? Okay. Sure. I think it'll be a little easier to hear as well. And I wanted to share with you that you have the final report. We are working on putting together what I would call an admin record compilation. And Zach, if I could have you just hold up, we will turn this in by the deadline of our contract. It not only has the report that you all have, but it will have the agenda, notes, presentations that were presented at the stakeholder meetings, and other information such as letters of support for moving on to the next steps of a needs assessment. And I would just share with you, I believe those have been coming into Administrator Mullally, and we expect there will be others kind of coming in throughout the month, and so thought we would put it in that format to give you one complete copy of that by the end of the year, at the end of the contract. Most notably, the Pennington County Commission discussed this issue discussed this issue at their regular meeting last Tuesday and voted 5-0 to support moving on to a needs assessment. And 4 of the 5 commissioners spoke about the importance of looking at additional water for Pennington County, supported the idea of looking at Missouri River water for Pennington County, and pledged to assist in presenting and preparing information that might be needed for such an assessment. And they said what you oftentimes hear are that there are many subdivisions and other developments throughout the county that have water scarcity and what to do about that. And so that was, I would say, the basis of their interest and support for moving on and continuing to look at the topic. Next slide. That one there. This is a familiar graph that has come out of the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology study that you asked for a few years ago and was presented to you about this time last year, helping to answer the question whether or not your future use water permit should be renewed. And their answer was yes, because as you look at this particular graph, if we were in a prolonged drought this year, there would be a delta, a shortage of water for the study area that they looked at. And granted, they did not take into account reservoirs, nor did they take into account conservation measures, which communities throughout the Black Hills would undoubtedly put into place. But it does give you an idea of where this area stands in terms of its availability to have water in times of long drought. I grabbed a quote out of a book that Peter Carrolls wrote, Uphill Against Water, and he grabbed it from Cadillac Desert, which said, "Reason is the first casualty in a drought." And thus how important it is to have planning, pre-planning in case of an emergency, such as a multi-year drought. Next slide, please. Thanks, Dan. I also took the opportunity to look at the Black Hills hydrology study, which was done 20 years ago. I said to someone I thought it was about 10 years ago, so time flies, I guess. And John Laux was sitting in your seat. You were sitting in Dale Tech's seat at the time, I believe, when a lot of this work was done to look, and Dan, you were over at USGS. And in that particular study, I just pulled out some information for you. You'll see on the left-hand side of the slide the counties that had been pulled together to work on this regional hydrology study. They included Butte, Custer, Fall River, Lawrence, Meade, and of course Pennington County. And it also included the very eastern edges of Wyoming because of the nature of the geology of the area and the location of the aquifers that were particularly studied. And it says in that report that West Dakota Water Development District took the lead in pulling together many counties so that not just Pennington County, not just Lawrence County, as the case was up until that time, but many counties could work together to understand what was mutually available to everybody in the Black Hills as far as water. They also talked about population in the study area. And surprisingly, about 45% of the population was in unincorporated areas at that time, 55% in communities. And it would be interesting to update those figures now. But as you see, almost every meeting, there's a group of homeowners, landowners that come in and talk to you about issues about water availability, water scarcity. And they are, in many cases, not in those communities that can have the means to have long-term planning for their water supplies. The Black Hills Hydrology study also talked about the fact that the prolonged drought in between in the 1930s and the 50s, that there was not as much data available to really understand what the hydrologic response would be of that drought with regard to the aquifers. But it did talk about the fact that the recharge based upon precipitation to both the Madison and Menalusa aquifers from 1931 to 1998 was on average 344 cubic feet per second. But what's interesting is the range of that recharge, which went all the way down to 62 cubic feet per second in 1936, all the way up to 847 cubic feet per second in 1995. And so you can see and map that along precipitation and understand how reliant those aquifers are with regard to precipitation, and thus an issue with regard to drought. Yes, question?
I don't mean to blow your mojo, but
Okay.
62 CFS, do you have any idea how long it stayed low like that?
I don't have that readily available.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
But, yeah. So, next slide, please. Let's just talk then about the recommendations coming out of our work with you and the stakeholders over this last year. They fall into three major categories. One is governance, the other is technical evaluations, and the third is funding. Next slide, please. One of the topics that our stakeholders spent some time learning about from our speakers, as well as talking among others within their own respective organizations, was if there were to be a water project, who would be the manager of that project? Who would be the group to make the applications for the grants? Who would manage those kinds of aspects of such a major project? And as the group looked at different examples, it became obvious that a nonprofit corporation that was a water system is a model that is used quite a bit in South Dakota. You've all heard of nonprofit corporations, 501c3s, and that sort of thing. And what we really have looked at is a 501c4. And that gives you the opportunity, if such a corporation were formed, to lobby for funding from Congress. If you were the other kind of nonprofit, you could not. And one of the prohibitions, though, if you have a 501c4, is that any contributions that individuals would make to that would not be tax deductible. This corporation, in all likelihood, would be formed by individual entities that have a very strong interest in moving this idea forward. It has been talked about loosely, although I don't think ever about that West Dakota does not see themselves in that particular role to manage a major water project, and that although being supportive, would not want to take on that management responsibility. So this new corporation, we called it New Org. If you've worked with other businesses, sometimes you see New Corp as a new entity. And that membership would be decided upon by the incorporators. Some examples would be that every major stakeholder that would stand to receive water might have a board member. Maybe if you have a collection of small subdivisions and developments, they could pool together to share a board position as well. So that would need to be decided. As far as geographic boundaries go, there's a lot to consider there as well. Some of the interests have to do with how do you really combine and join together the right groups that really multiply your chances of getting funding and getting approval for a major project. That might include multiple counties. It might include working with the tribes. If there is also a connection with Ellsworth Air Force Base, and as you can see, the environmental impact statement is just out on Ellsworth Air Force Base, looking at major new increases having to do with the B-21 weapons platform. It's an exciting prospect for our area, but it's not only the 3,500 new employees that would be out there, employees and military personnel, but the 4,200 projected family members that come with it. And then that does not include the spin-off businesses that would be brought to town to help support not only the mission, but other needs of those new members of our community. In conversations in preparing for this report, we also followed up with the folks at South Dakota Association of Rural Water Systems, and they said, we hope it's okay, but we've let our counterpart in Wyoming know about what you're doing. And there is some interest there, and as you can think about some of those communities, Sundance, Newcastle, and those right along the border, the South Dakota rural water folks said what they have seen is that when you can add a state, then you have another congressional delegation that has interest in this and can help promote this for additional congressional support. The name, when incorporation happens, would be set. I know there's a lot of interest in getting it named sooner than later, but those who come together to make the new corporation would make that decision. And then also decide on dues. And some of you who have been part of the stakeholder meetings heard Dave Odens, who is the project engineer with Lewis and Clark, say that, you know, even if groups are spending, you know, maybe $100 a quarter to support this organization, it shows a level of support and also then provides some administrative help to help that organization. And I believe that some of there may be miscellaneous expenses like sending someone to Washington, D.C. To lobby for a project which cannot come out of federal funds, obviously, and so it would need to come out of something like dues. Next slide. The second area of recommendations has to do with technical evaluations. And there's a graph on the slide here, which is also in your report, that talks about kind of the sequencing of work that needs to be done. A needs assessment that really can show, you know, what would be involved, who would be interested, how much water would be required, and Joe will talk about that a little later. But important to come out of a needs assessment is to really talk about the financial feasibility of such a project. You know, obviously, not only will communities not be interested in this project if the cost of water is too high, the federal agencies aren't interested in funding design and project that cannot ultimately be built because it doesn't add up and is not financially feasible. And so that is a big part of a needs assessment. We don't start from scratch. We take the work that's been done by the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology and other reports and build on that. We work with communities in understanding their needs, their projections, and obviously some communities are further along than others, and so that would be part of the work involved there. Once there is a project that is feasible, there are even more detailed plans and engineering evaluations put into place. Preliminary engineering reports is a common term that many agencies look for, whether it's USDA Rural Development or the Bureau of Reclamation or the state of South Dakota, to be able to get on their funding cycles for some of the work as well. Environmental compliance is a big part of it. In a needs assessment, we do what we call an environmental scan to make sure there are no showstoppers. But then there's a more detailed environmental impact statement, in all likelihood that would be required to do a detailed evaluation to meet federal rules. And then, of course, final design and construction. And so you've heard from different organizations that have taken on these major water projects that you don't build them on a dime. They take a while to develop, and it's because of all of the work that goes into place to make sure that it's a good design, a good project for communities. And next slide. So in terms of funding, there's some organizations that we have been in touch with who have made presentations to our stakeholder group. And of course, you're at the top of the list. You funded that initial effort to reach out to people in West River who might have a need. And then I put under consideration the needs assessment, of course, which is a topic later this evening. The state of South Dakota is another potential source. Part of the cycle of doing the needs assessment would be to do initial efforts to get on the state water plan late spring for final approval later in a year. Again, all of these things have a long lag time, but are procedurally an important step in moving a project forward. Federal funding is available for those preliminary engineering reviews that I talked about, as well as environmental compliance. And then funding also would be membership dues. Members who say, yes, let's come together and form an entity to take this forward, would pay for the incorporation of such an organization. And then operations of that organization long-term as well. Next slide. And just to point out, and perhaps Jay, who is on the phone, could talk a little bit more about it, but it's our understanding that at the very initial stages, for example, of the Lewis and Clark project, that East Dakota Water Development District played a similar role in kind of jump-starting or as we've used the term catalyst, to get this conversation underway. And over the years, it is also my understanding that they have not paid for the brunt of the work that's being done there, but they step in on occasion to help support a trip to Washington, D.C., or some other aspect of the project that cannot be paid out of federal dollars as well. And so that brings us to the conclusion of the update on the final report. And just want to say again that on behalf of all of the folks at Banner who have worked on this, it's been our pleasure to work on this project with you. It's an exciting opportunity, as we see. Open for questions.
Jay, are you still on the line? Did you want to offer up any comments?
He's still on mute.
Jay, the question is, would you like to offer any comments to the board?
Nothing in particular other than to say that Dr. Chapman's characterization of our involvement in the Lewis and Clark process was quite good. We were a partner helping a group of interested parties look to develop a regional water source to address a need that people could see coming down the line. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
If everybody on the board will look at page 4 of her graph, I want to go over something real fast as this rolls into the next thing, which is the funding. I want everybody to look at the timeline and look at 2040. Last year when we did the study, nobody assumed we'd have a boon of 20,000 individuals moving to the Black Hills. 20,000. Every house that was built this year and every house that's forecasted to be built for the next 6 months is already sold. Everywhere. There's only 40 houses on the market in Rapid City available. All those new apartment high-rises you see on the south side of town, they're fully rented, fully leased. So in 1 year, we skipped 20 years of projected growth for population. And that's not even with the incoming influx of the base yet. And I don't expect that influx to stop this coming year. So by the time a year goes by, we're going to be sitting at the 2050 population table. And as you can already see, we're way above the red line. And we're in drought conditions now. So I would just hope that everybody takes a very serious effort to look at where the population is, to where our demand for water is, because right now, we're already behind the 8 ball.
I have a couple questions, Cheryl. So one of the things that I'm wondering about, and I just got so busy this week, I meant to reach out to Dan and ask, but kind of a two-part question and probably stupid questions, but I'm going to ask them anyway. So I know in some of the stakeholder meetings, I've had the question of, if we have this future permit for Missouri River, if we don't use that, and someone else comes along and says, hey, I have a greater need for that, that is a possibility that that could be taken away and given to someone who has a need, a great need for that, which I feel that we have that great need in western South Dakota already. So my question is, I don't know how much money we've spent over the years to keep this future water permit. Do we know how much we've spent on that?
About $700 every 7 years. Hardly anything.
So,
I'm somewhat familiar with that because I worked for the city. We had a water future use permit too, and then we were getting
Sure.
permits for other sources too at the time. So anyway, I think if you look at all the future use permits on the Missouri River, the Water Management Board is the one that approves that every 7 years. Mm-hmm. And as long as you show an interest, which we have done here with this study with the school mind and with Boundaries, that they're not going to turn us down.
so they're not going to worry.
And we have a priority date, 1976 priority date, and that's kind of the key thing, is you first in time, first in right.
Okay.
And so West Dakota and the city of Rapid City got future use permits about the same time.
So we're not worried at all about that getting taken away from us. I mean, that's like zero concern.
I wouldn't say it's 100%. It's highly unlikely. And actually, Jay might want to respond to that. But, I don't see them turning us down or anybody else that has a future use permit. There's plenty of water right now. There's water available for new water permits on the Missouri River. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to respond to that. I agree with your comments in regard to that, but there's an underlying assumption there, and that is that things stay the way that they are. So it's my understanding that during the Obama administration, there was a big push on federalization of those waters. And Corps of Engineers, I think, came in and tried to basically take control of probably all waters, but I know that they were looking at the Missouri River. And if that happened, then these future use permits that are issued by the state would become null and void. So it would then be managed by the Corps of Engineers. There'd be a whole new ballgame as far as rules and priorities and so forth. So that's my concern in regard to this, is that yes, the water's there. There's plenty of water there, and we do have priority on the state list. However, if that state list is nullified for whatever reason, then we basically go back to square one. Now,
What will they do for existing?
I also agree with your comment that if we've taken action, that would be very difficult, I think, for anybody, including the federal government, to come in and say, you've held this future use permit for 50 some odd years and you haven't done anything with it, so we're just going to nullify it. If we can show that we are moving forward on something, I don't know that anybody could make that argument that we're not doing anything with it. We will be.
Well, this Corps of Engineers, are they talking about taking away existing water permits
I think
on the Missouri River?
Yeah, no, I don't know about existing water rights, but I think as far as issuing, like what we're talking about, future water rights, yes.
Just the future, not existing water permits.
I don't know all the details on it. I did talk to the water rights guys in Pierre at one time, asking them about that, and they said yes, that did occur. The state of South Dakota did fight that successfully, but that doesn't mean that if it happens again, that it will be successful. I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of irrigation permits
Sure.
in South Dakota for Missouri River water, and according to the state, the highest and most beneficial use of water is for potable purposes, municipal, industrial, and so forth, not irrigation.
I think this is one of the reasons why it's important for us to keep moving the ball forward.
There's, your question is as much a legal question as an engineering question. One of the things we in South Dakota do have going for us is that the Missouri River is not fully allocated like other rivers in the country. And so we have that going for us as well, but it can get kind of complex, and not only all of the existing water rights, future use water rights, but tribal water rights as well. So lots of issues to take into consideration that way.
Yeah, for example, Rapid Creek is fully over allocated.
That is a good example of one that is, yeah.
So.
Did you have another question?
Thank you. I do, but I was going to let somebody else talk.
Okay.
I think we're all good. So, okay, I have another question then. As a consumer, you think about the scarcity of water and that becoming a bigger problem. So doesn't scarcer water mean higher water rates throughout all of the area? Not just Pennington County, but we're supporting Pennington County, so we got a lot of people to think about right here. And we don't have another huge solution like that on the books right now. So I think about that as a consumer on how my water rates are going to go up when all of a sudden people are scrambling for where they're going to get their water. And I guess as a fledgling board member, and I am in full support of this, just so everybody, you're going to understand that. But I guess what I'm thinking is in support of Pennington County and the taxpayer dollars that we utilize, it seems responsible to help mitigate what could be the scarcity of water and higher water rates. I know it's not a guarantee that that's going to happen, but I feel that this board here has a responsibility to support a project that's going to assure that not just Pennington County, but the entire area has plenty of water. And you think about Pennington County and how many tourists come here. We're not just talking about the base. We're talking about the hundreds of thousands of people who love to come to the Black Hills and take advantage of all the recreational opportunities, the beautiful places we have to stay. And suddenly, higher water rates can translate into higher rates at a hotel or a bed and breakfast or camping or whatever it could be. It's not just one little community. I mean, we have an opportunity to help hundreds of thousands of people instead of just hundreds of people. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything?
In regard to the report, since we do have a subject matter expert on the board, and Dan Driscoll, I'm wondering if he might know ballparkish the answer to that question that I asked earlier in regard to that 62 CFS in 1936. Do you know how long that may have continued?
We know very well that the drought of the 1930s was the most severe on record. It would have been, the mid-30s, and as far as any specifics, you simply have to refer to the written documentation on that. I don't have it at my fingertips.
Do you think it was a few years, or was it a decade, or what was the scope, what was the magnitude, do you think?
The way it was reported to us here tonight, that sounds like the minimum year. Beyond that, I don't have a sense for that.
Good. Thank you.
Linda?
I guess I just wanted to comment a little bit on your questions about increasing water rates. And I'm going to use Rapid City's water system as an example. Most of their supply is coming from groundwater wells in the Madison Aquifer. It's good quality water requiring minimal treatment, chlorination and fluoridation. It costs a little bit more to treat surface water because you have to treat the water more, filtration and a lot more. One thing Rapid City has available to them is they can further develop their groundwater sources. They're not using all that's there. So they have that option. They also have an option of maybe putting in another intake into Rapid Creek. If they were to buy into a pipeline from the Missouri River, which they may or may not do sooner or later, that's going to be very expensive water because it's surface water. It's going to require full treatment. Plus, you're moving it over 150 miles. So, what other rural water systems have seen in the state, it's expensive water. But if that's your only option, you're going to pay it. But
Sure.
a lot of people on rural water, several years ago when I was more involved in drinking water, they might pay $50 a month for water. Me here in Rapid City, I was paying maybe 7 or 10.
Okay. Thank you, Linda.
Okay.
In regards to water rates, I think they went up 20% this year.
10% for the city.
10% twice, 2 years in a row.
Two
They
years.
raised it, yeah. So 20%
In 2 years.
over the course of 1 year's time. So I've never seen a water bill go down.
No, and they're always going to go
And
up.
I don't think you ever will.
No, no matter where you're at, it's never gonna be cheaper.
But
And,
with the studies we have show that we'll be out of it.
yeah.
I don't care how much rapid tax.
If I could just add a little bit as well, this study did not get into water rates. That's, the needs assessment would begin to look at, you know, what is the financial feasibility of these projects? Because if water bills, you know, quadruple or something like that, it quickly becomes not a feasible sort of project and that sort of thing. You know, one of the things that we've learned with some of our experts that have talked to our stakeholder group is that as the congressional funding is received, to also ask for an allocation from Western Area Power for substantially reduced cost of power. And, you know, increasingly, one of the areas that Dan and I adjunct teach over at, or you not, maybe not adjunct, but when I was teaching sustainable engineering last year, there is definitely a lot of work being done to go toward understanding how do you do a project with a net zero energy cost. You know, and that may not be completely achievable, but there's a lot of new technologies, both in place today and coming forward, that could be used, and that ultimately is one of the higher costs of a water project. So, other questions? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, that brings us to item number 9, funding request from Banner for a needs assessment study for stakeholders in the next steps for the Missouri River water for western South Dakota. Second vote.
Mr. Chair, I motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we got a motion from James Bialotta, seconded by Nathan, to approve the funding request by Banner. Discussion. Go ahead.
I have a question for Dr. Chapman that I wanted to wait until the funding request for, because I thought it was more germane to that topic than just your report. Right now it appears...
We might have Joe Munson, who, with our Banner office, who would be leading up this work for us as well, join me in answering any questions you might have. So.
Well, right now it appears that the request is for full funding of this needs assessment, the environmental screen, etc., from the West Dakota Water Development District. We have letters of support. I like to have all my stuff paid for without chipping in either. Are there any offers of support or commitments of support for funding from partners, as Jay Gilbertson indicated, were very important in how East Dakota went forward with their assistance for a regional water system? Are there any level of support or funding?
I would say that most folks are very interested in seeing what happens next, but no request for funding was made to any of our stakeholders at all right now. So, and so that was not part of the questions to the stakeholders. So.
I kind of, you know, I'm having a little bit of problem us paying for this when we got partners from all the way across western South Dakota. You and I had a discussion this morning about this. I did.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We can barely hear the speakers. Mr. Coach, I could barely hear him.
I'll talk louder.
I think it's that.
I will try to. I kind of agree with what Brian said.
Yeah.
You know,
It's chilly.
if you wanted
If
to
you didn't hear
repeat
me, I
it.
can repeat my question. I'd like to hear it.
Okay, go
My
ahead.
question was to Dr. Chapman and the Banner Group, and I indicated I was wondering if there were any of the stakeholders to this point that have indicated any financial support, or whether it was all to be borne by West Dakota, which is contrary to how East Dakota assisted Lewis and Clark as a partner in a project for regional water supply. She responded and said there was no requests made for any funding. So it's right now all on West Dakota as a single entity.
And my comment is kind of in line with what Ron was saying, is that, this is a pretty large expenditure for West Dakota. We have about $120,000 available per year to fund projects within our district. And a lot of it has been smaller systems, it's 20,000, 30,000 type of commitments to projects. And, we've spent about $60,000 so far, $70,000 so far to where we are today with this Banner report. I would feel a lot more comfortable personally if we had some partners that would step forward and help us fund this thing. I did visit with the city of Rapid City to see, they did send a letter of support, and I wanted to find out what are you talking about support. Well, right now, the city of Rapid City is doing a water utility master plan and needs assessment for Rapid City. And they're under contract with a consultant. And that master plan and needs assessment is supposed to be finished by mid-July of this year from the consultant. And right now, they just flat told me, they said, we're not in a position to fund it today or in the near future, any part of this study this needs assessment that we're looking at going forward. So, and we've already had a little discussion about what they're looking at for Rapid City itself, developing more Madison wells, as Linda said, way less expensive. The water rates are going to be less if we use that water first. And this needs assessment that they're looking at is in that 30 to 40 years. And one of the things that and it's in the place, actually, I actually worked on it when I worked for the city, was a water conservation plan for Rapid City, depending on where water levels were in Pactola. That's still in place. And so if we go into a long-term drought here and water levels in Pactola drop like they did back in the mid-'80s, started dropping fast, they cut off watering parks. They cut off watering the park system, the golf courses and so forth. The city uses a lot of water, and it's potable water. And so they're going to start squeezing those down. They may require the residents to maybe water it once a week, that sort of thing, depending on the severity of the drought and where the level of water is in Pactola Reservoir and Deerfield, because they have water rights in both. The city has water rights in Pactola, surface water, storage water rights in Pactola and in Deerfield. And they have about 49,000 acre feet in Pactola and 15,000 acre feet. Excuse me, they have 7,000 acre feet in Deerfield. Deerfield has 15,000 acre feet. So they do have a pretty good backup. The other thing is that they're going to continue to do, and a program that I worked on when I was with the city was purchasing senior water rights on Rapid Creek. First in time, first in right. So there's downstream irrigation ditches that have a lot of water rights, senior water rights to Rapid Creek, and a lot of them are higher in priority than some of the ones that the city has. So as the city develops out towards the east, down Highway 44 where these irrigation ditches are, and that land becomes more valuable, the ranchers are looking at the value of their property, and is it cost effective to continue to raise alfalfa out there, or is it time to sell? And if they decide to sell, the city has a program that would purchase the water rights that they have for those irrigated fields and use that. And that's existing water supply that just flows in Rapid Creek. So that's some of the things that they're doing right now. Personally, I'm not going to vote for this evening because I would like to wait and see what Rapid City water utility master plan and needs assessment says. So I'm not going to be supporting this evening.
Mr. Chair?
Could I just a point of order? The work from Banner this year was 24,500.
But the School of Mines,
In addition to that.
yeah, the total, between Banner and
Yeah.
School of Mines was about
Yeah.
70,000 that we spent on this,
Question.
on this water right program. So that's how much we've invested so far. Anybody else have a comment? Well, who's first? Nathan?
I just wanted to respond to some of those comments. In regard to asking stakeholders or partners to pay or to chip in, that's kind of what we're looking at here, is developing those, the stakeholders and partners that would then be involved in setting up this new organization, this corporation. So that's part of what we're looking at here. In regard to if we end up in a water shortage, I mean, I don't think you were suggesting that we can simply rely on conservation measures to carry the day for us.
Oh, no, that's part of the plan. I mean, they
Obviously,
have-
that's something that would happen, but that wouldn't, you know, if we got into a 1930s style drought, that wouldn't even come close to managing what kinds of water shortages we would have. So, and the other thing I wanted to mention is that you mentioned Rapid City, and I think Rapid City, maybe out of all cities in western South Dakota, might be in the best shape in terms of their water supply. So I don't think we should be gauging the needs of western South Dakota on the city of Rapid City, you know, the city that could, like I said, be in the best condition. We've got cities all over western South Dakota that have significant needs right now. And actually, we've got a member of one of those communities that's here tonight. Bob Kaufman is the city engineer with the city of Box Elder. Bob, I don't know if you wanted to say anything in regard to this, or?
Well, yeah, we fully support this project, and our council is willing to put some money towards the project when we find out if we actually have a doable project, which is what we felt this needs assessment would do. It actually gives some direction to lead to the next steps. We fully support the project, and from my viewpoint, you know, I kind of felt that this project fit right in with what this board was here to do. I fulfilled your charter, your Western Dakota Water Development. This is kind of right up your alley. So we think it's a good project. We support it fully, and we also support it from the standpoint that we don't need to just keep looking at the water. And I'll use Rapid City as an example. You know, yes, Rapid City's taking care of their needs. They're doing a great job with it. But the state will even tell you, we need to be looking at regionalization of our systems. And the state supports that concept of regionalization. And that's why the water districts on the eastern part of the state have done so well. Because that's the concept the state is promoting. And that's part of what we were hoping to accomplish with a project like this, is develop a regionalized system for the western part of the state.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I want to remind everybody, this is called the West Dakota Water Development District, not the Rapid City Water Development District. Every time you have a question, you run back to your old bosses and say, what can we do for you guys? Do you realize Keystone was here and you're denying them money? Guess what director represents Keystone? That would be you, Mr. Chair.
What are you talking about?
Last week, when Keystone was asking money for their water, you told them adamantly no. And today you're running back to support Rapid City. Rapid City, who's in the black on their water bill. Rapid City, the only division they profit on is their water department. And you're going to besmirch every community, Wall, Wasta, Kadoka, all these smaller areas that we represent, because we're West Dakota, Mac, all of Pennington, east of Missouri, not just Rapid City where most of you guys live. And you want to run and give money to the city of Rapid every chance you get, yet besmirch the community you represent. That is the most outlandish, asinine thing I have heard all year.
Are you through?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out why anybody, and, you know, obviously Keystone,
Well,
you know,
Rapid-
when they ask for help from you,
Let me
you
just
ignore
respond to you.
them.
Rapid City, as far as potable water usage in our district, is by far, probably, you know, you mentioned some percentage, but potable water-wise, I would say they're over 50% in the city of Rapid City.
But you don't represent only the city of Rapid. And when you figure that out, the whole county will be
Rapid
better
City-
for it.
I believe Rapid City needs to be on board with us proceeding, and right now, they're not in a position, and they told me.
Why does Rapid City need to be on board when we got other communities and other water rights that are willing to jump on?
Step up here and help us.
It's our job to
Rock Shelter, you
pay
wanna
for
put some
this
money into
and
this?
then go to those other cities and municipalities and then ask them to step in. If you want Banner to do that, maybe we should pay Banner to do that. But we didn't pay Banner to do that. That's what they're requesting funds now. You're asking them to put the cart before the horse. You want them to go out and ask for all this money, and who's it going to go into? Their account? Our account? That's why it has to go into a corporation account.
Are you through?
I guess.
Nathan?
I beat a dead horse, but I get tired and the horse just looks at me.
I agree with your comments that it would be nice to see Rapid City participate in this and be interested in it. I think the reason why they're not, like I said, is I think they're flush with their water needs, unintended, for some time. And so they're not seeing this as something that they need right now. But I think, you know, I had a conversation with Dale Tech recently also, and, you know, what I discussed with him is that this will be something that is required by the city of Rapid City eventually. I don't know when, but at some point in time in the future, they will definitely need it. We all will. And like we discussed before, if we don't keep moving this project forward, we might lose it. We might lose all of it. And then we'd have the potential for nothing. I think it's important that we try to move this forward. We just keep moving it forward incrementally. We know that it will be needed. It's going to be needed maybe in 10 years if our growth keeps going like it is this year. It might be needed in 80 years, which is what the city of Rapid City is, you know, what their planning horizon is right now. But it will be needed.
Personally, I would like to see what their master plan and needs assessment study says before we can move forward. Have some more great information from the largest potable water supplier in the West Dakota Water Development
But they're not
District.
serving anybody other than Rapid.
They're in West Dakota Water Development District.
But they're only serving Rapid residents. They don't care about anybody outside of Rapid. If they decide to shut off Box Elder, Box Elder's shut off. They're not serving Wall. They're not serving Wasta. They're not serving Keystone. They're not serving Hill City. When they plug a pipe down to Hill City and Keystone, then it'll be quiet. But you got to represent your district, not just the neighborhood you live in. And your district goes all the way to Keystone.
I think I am, actually, but go ahead.
Just as a point of clarification, Director Bialotta, we did support the city of Keystone at our last meeting.
not
new
not the
treasurer,
person that should have that represents that
I
district.
just wrote the check for, or signed the check for 25 grand this
But the
evening.
person that represents that
So just as a
district
point of
besmirched
order,
them and denied them.
We just did that.
Right. No thanks to the person that should have supported them.
That was just a point of order. Anyway, so I have one other comment on this topic. One of the things that was not accomplished, and maybe I'm just not reading it right, but we didn't or maybe I should ask the question, did you actually come up with a draft organizational charter that was going to be agreed to by the various stakeholders that participated, or is that yet to come?
That, the final details have to be decided upon from the incorporators ultimately. There's a number of items outlined, as you saw in the governance part, what type of corporation, suggestions for membership, suggestion for dues and that sort of thing. Ultimately, that group needs to incorporate with an attorney in all likelihood and make a final decision on how they exactly would like to do that. And that'll be dependent upon who comes around the table to be some of those initial incorporators.
Okay, just as a follow-up to that then, I'm kind of getting to the point where I think we are a little bit ahead on funding a needs assessment when we don't really have the organization yet. You know, I think it's a very interesting idea to explore. You know, it could have regional benefit, but I think there needs to be a little more development with, you know, that sort of official commitment, I should say, from all these people that you've talked to, that we can then become a partner with, instead of just pushing ahead without really getting them fully engaged. So I think we need to maybe wait a minute on the deal until it gets a little more formed.
Is there any more comments from the board? Just wait, Mike. I'm going to cover the board members first.
Sure. My question would be to Mike Mueller, who is a former chair. In your past experience, did you have this type of activity where you're trying to put in a large program, but you have to have a needs assessment in front of that program before you can go back to your other people?
May I answer?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've got, the concept I was going to roll out was like a building construction project. You hire a consultant, and the very first thing they do is the concept. You fuzz out rough program spaces, and you may spend 20% of your consulting fee just getting to that point. That's what this needs assessment looks like to me. So now you sectionalize this in phases as a contract, and you take it to a point, and if you don't get enough buy-in, that's where the contract ends, at that 20%, because you can't sell the concept to the stockholders or whoever's got to make that decision. If you get through the concept and they like it, you start going into schematic design, so then you start putting blocks in places, you go to design development, construction drawings, and then by the end of the project, you've got about 10% fee left to watch for construction administration. So maybe that's the way this could be built. Get the needs assessment done, maybe that's only 20% of what you're asking for now. Get to that level and say, okay, where are we? Who's bought in? Who's the stakeholders' interest? And maybe that's a way to approach this and not get for the whole label.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. You haven't said anything about it.
So far, I've heard a statement of interest and support from the city of Box Elder. I'd like to ask if there's any other water users that would potentially be users of the Missouri River Pipeline who are in the audience who'd like to speak to their needs and potential support for this project.
Mr. Chairman, if I could respond to that too,
Sure.
Dan, is that stakeholders were not given information, this decision will be made on the state or anything to that effect as well, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Nathan, did you have more? Okay.
It was just a question.
Oh, okay.
I've seen my answer from the response.
A couple of things I'd like to respond to. One is that, Zach, can you read just who we have letters of support from in that binder?
Should have.
And-
Pennington County is out, yeah.
Okay. So those are some big, I had one other thing, sorry.
Okay, you're fine.
So, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned the city of Rapid City, that you're gauging the need for this project off of the need that Rapid City is showing for the project. And again, you know, from my perspective, the city of Rapid City is probably in the best shape of probably any other community in western South Dakota. So of any community, they're probably going to be showing the least need for this, and yet we still have a letter of support from them for this project. In regard to current need, I'm going to go back to the city of Box Elder. Mr. Kaufman, does the city of Box Elder have a current need for water?
Yes, right now we are short one well just to meet our annual, or not say our annual, but our daily peak needs in the summer months. We get by quite well with water restrictions, but to meet the state desired water levels that you should have, we are actually one well short. So we have a need for a water well right now.
I have a question for you, Bob.
Sure.
You know, the city of Gillette, Wyoming, it's been several years ago. You know, the potable water out there is deep, like it is out by Box Elder, and so they decided to go to the Madison Formation, you know, by east of Moorcroft. Has Box Elder, have you looked at something like that, drilling some wells along the hogback here?
Yes, we have.
And has there been studies to supply, you know, some additional source?
No, we haven't studied it. It's something that we've been talking about as an alternative.
Yeah.
The dilemma becomes how deep you have to go and how much pipe you put in, and where do you find that balance in the cost?
Yeah, so you have looked at it. Because there is water available right now that would be relatively inexpensive for Box Elder to.
We understand that we've got ways that we can meet our immediate needs.
Okay.
But we go back to this report that the School of Mines had done and said, that's great, we have groundwater available now.
Yeah.
But in 30 years, if that groundwater is not available and we haven't done something now to start moving towards that, you know, it goes back to the old Chinese proverb, when's the best time to plant a tree? 30 years ago.
That's true. Okay, thanks for your comment.
Mr. Chair. Dan, how many letters of support do you have up there as well, besides the city of Deadwood?
Deadwood, Rapid City, Pennington County, Box Elder. So there's 4.
Tom, you have something?
Yeah, I looked at those letters last night in the packet, and they almost seem like they're form letters exactly the same, like when you're like, petition this, use this form, because they're almost verbatim. When they showed their support, did they actually give all, like, other reasons? Because basically these are all cookie cutter letters, and they all look the same, and I bet if you put them in a plagiarizing software, they would all be marked out except the name and where they placed West Dakota.
You know, as they were interested, I offered, I said, do you need any sample language? So that's why they all look similar. So it was to, yeah. So.
Just wanted to make.
I just want people, especially out in the public, I'm not totally against this. I just think that we're rushing into this thing, and I really would like to see what Rapid City's planning to do, because I do know on the treatment side that they are looking at spending tens of millions of dollars here in the near future as another surface water treatment facility, because the one at Mountain View is about to expire, and so I know they're looking at other possible locations along Rapid Creek to have a new treatment plant. So they are going to be spending a lot of money to supply their utility customers water that is going to be, come to light, and hopefully share it with us here at West Dakota on what they're planning on doing here in the next 30 or 40 years, and whether the Missouri River is even, where does that fit? Where does the Missouri River water fit in their plan?
Mr. Chair.
You can go first.
Okay, thanks. I respect what Director Mack was saying about the letters, but I do want to point out that those individuals still did sign those letters. They put their name on the letter. So, I completely get the form letter and all that. That's kind of the industry that I work in as well. But those individuals actually put their name on it, and I would like to think, would not have done so without a good intention behind it. So there's that, and I had another point, and I completely lost it. So I'm going to let somebody else go.
This is a quick question about the formation of the new org. We'll just call it new org. How much would that actually cost to actually get some organizational buy-in? I know, is that actually part of the first phase of the 74,000 that you had mentioned on the proposal, or is that something completely different that would be outside the banner scope?
Well, it seems like it would be that is outside of our scope. And I think there are enough stakeholders, such as the city of Box Elder, who would like to move out. And perhaps, 2, 3, 4 of the stakeholders could step forward and say, we'll share that initial cost so we can get that ball rolling. I'm making some assumptions. I have not talked to any of the stakeholders about that.
More of a legal.
But it's a legal thing, and usually to incorporate in a new nonprofit, it's not a high cost item. You create the articles of incorporation, bylaws, and then you're off and running. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, when it comes to incorporating, it's actually really inexpensive. The only thing you need to do is once you're incorporated, once a year, an annual report, and you need to have someone who's legally allowed to sign for all your documents. That is your, it's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, there's one designated person on your report. I can't remember the legal term right now. It's either an officer of the board or an admin or an attorney that accepts all legal documents for the organization, for service of process or anything else, grants, things like that. And I just want to remind you again, Mr. Virke, that if the city of Rapid is going to drill a well, are they going to provide water to New Underwood?
You'll have to ask him that.
Oh, you don't know how to answer it? I'm asking you, are they going to provide water to the city of New Underwood? Because we don't represent solely the city of Rapid.
More than likely, that's true. I mean, the city council's position was that they did not want to be a regional water system. Even when I was a utility manager, the city council determined that. They said, if you want city services, and there's more to it than just getting water and being annexed into town, because they got streets and that sort of thing.
You call on yourself 20 times and you skip every board member. The other thing I want to bring up, 100 municipal wells between here and the Missouri River. That's not cheap. You're talking about, Rapid City's going to drill a well and we're going to be all good. No, Rapid City's going to be all good. You skip the other 100 communities. You're talking about drilling 100 municipal wells and 100 water towers.
I'm not following your logic. What do you...
That this water is going to feed more than 100 communities from the Missouri River to here. And if you get your head out of the clouds of Rapid City, you'd be surprised that there's a whole world outside of Rapid City. A world that we represent. From Wasta
I understand what
to Hill City and Keystone.
I totally...
And I'm not done. So, hold your tone. We represent, from Wasta, the rest of Pennington County west. Not just the city of Rapid. And the city of Rapid is not cheering anybody's water ills except for the city of Rapid. No one else is. They're not drilling a well for New Underwood. They're not drilling a well for Box Elder. They're not going to drill a well for Wasta. They're not drilling a well for Kadoka. They're not drilling a well for Wall. They're not doing one for Hill City or Keystone or any of the multiple of subdivisions in between. This is.
Nathan?
I just wanted to respond to Director Mack in regard to the letters of support. I think Banner offered up something as a template to these people. Typically, I think if you look at who signed those letters of support, these are people in leadership positions. They don't have a lot of time to be drafting letters, so I'm sure they appreciated getting the template letter and reviewed it and signed what was made available to them because it said what they wanted to say. So, and then I don't know if Jay Gilbertson is still on the line and if he wanted to weigh in on this conversation at all before we go to a vote. Jay, are you still on the line?
Yeah, no, I'm still here. Boy, yeah. If I say no, are you going to hold that against me? I think certainly, you know, the district has a role to play in planning for all of its constituents, and that's important. And they can provide resources that might not be available to some of the smaller communities. At the same time, and I look at the Lewis and Clark example, without the city of Sioux Falls, which I'm just spitballing here is maybe 45% of the, is one of, a couple of dozen members, but represents about 45% of the capacity of the system. Without their involvement, Lewis and Clark wouldn't be what it is today. It would have been very difficult to make that happen. And so it's important to have everybody involved, and big and small. And if the consensus is that there's a need, then you continue to pursue it. There's nothing that says that this has to happen right away. There are certainly local needs. I've heard Box Elder indicate that they need water today. Well, this water isn't going to be available for 20 years is probably an optimistic approach, and so today's need is not necessarily a justification for going ahead and doing it. But as was said, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. So. Yeah. It came up during the stakeholder groups, consensus is paramount. If everybody's on board, it's still going to be a hard tug. If not everybody's on board, it's going to be a very difficult situation. So that's my 2 cents.
Who was up
I only have one quick question.
Okay.
Who signed the Rapid City letter?
Probably Dale Tech, I'd say.
Dale Tech.
Dale Tech, the public works director.
So it's in the packet.
And he supports it.
Well, I think these communities, I think Box Elder, I think Jay makes a very good point because they're not going. Box Elder's not going to get water from the Missouri River in 20 years. And I think, but I just think personally, I support this project too. I just think the timing right now is not right, and I would really like. I'm not going to vote for it tonight because I would really like to see what Rapid City is. It's just like Jay said, Lewis and Clark probably wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Sioux Falls, or at least not in the same form.
Did they not support it with a letter?
What's that?
Did they not support it with a letter? But we're supposed to listen to hearsay. They wrote a letter in support. We have to
who are you
believe
talking-
you in
excuse me,
private at a
excuse me,
meeting.
James, I'm talking here. I mean, yeah, the city's, I think the city long-term is in support of that.
Okay, so they support it.
Yeah, they wrote a letter.
That's what I
But-
just said.
But they're not in a position right now to be putting money into that, and that's what they told me. Now or in the near future.
Who's
Huh?
asking them to build the pipeline tomorrow?
Nobody. But,
Oh, okay.
but
then.
if we're going to get to that point, somebody's gonna have to spend some money, and,
Well, that's why we incorporate. I don't know if you listened to her presentation. We asked for federal grants.
possibly.
I don't think the Lewis and Clark was built by Sioux Falls.
No, but
It was built by mostly federal grants
took a long time.
with federal grants, and you can't do that unless you incorporate and get the ball rolling. And you're right, this isn't the right time to do this. The right time would have been 10 years ago.
What, did you have something you were gonna say?
I also think Rapid City is an important player, and they haven't, yes, they're in support, but they're not ready to do anything now until they get their assessment done. But I think they need to be a player because they've got water rights, and for a lot more water than we do. And if you're gonna build a pipeline, build it big or go home. You know, if you're gonna spend that kind of money, you want to be looking at future needs, and you're gonna, and if you build it, people are gonna want water along the way. So, I voted to continue this discussion, at our last meeting, because I'm interested in the project. I think it has a lot of merit, and it should likely happen at some point in the future. But since that meeting, I've had a little more time to think about it, do some research. I've also talked to the city.
How many people went to the city again? Was there 4 or more, 5 or more?
No, I didn't go to the city.
I didn't go to the city, I just talked to them.
Talked to some of their staff.
I talked to them, I didn't go down to the city, I just talked to them.
But, you know, Rapid City just, their focus right now is what they can do on their own. But they're keeping their water right because they see that need as well. And, you know, there's always been a lot of talk on this board as far as representing our constituents and how we spend our money. And we're basically talking about spending a whole year's projected revenue from our Pennington County taxes. Actually, even a little bit more.
Almost 2 years.
So I guess what I would like to do also, because we have 3 new board members coming on, they should have some input as well, because they're going to be sitting on this board, working with this board, possibly the stakeholders for the next 4 years. So for those reasons, you know, I'm not going to support the proposal tonight. But I do want to commend Banner for their excellent work, and I hope it does move forward.
Wendy?
So, I mean, we spent, and I think you guys have done a fabulous job too. We've already spent quite a bit of money as West Dakota to help support the work that's been done thus far. So we put this off. How far does that set us back if we decide we want to pick this back up again? Do we have to start over? And yet we've just spent all this taxpayer money. I guess I'm at the point where it's like, why did we even vote this to even start this if we did not intend to really pursue this? I'm, again, newer, but I'm confused by that we suddenly have decided that this is not, you know, I don't understand that part. And I feel, to some extent, that, and I get what you're saying about Rapid City too, and I do feel like they're probably a huge player in this, but I've talked to Rapid City on behalf of Valley Heights Estate, and they are all about Rapid City. They are not interested, even to go as far as Valley Heights Estates. They want nothing to do with us. So to say that we're going to wait on them, I somewhat get that because they're a big player, but I don't see that they're going to. I talked to Dale Tech on the phone. I probably talked to him for half an hour. They're not willing to give up water rights. Even once they do this assessment, how willing are they going to be to help these smaller communities? I don't see it when they won't even go over the hill to Valley Heights Estates, a community that's going to be in dire need in just the next couple of years because of their water tower. And yes, I live there, so a little bit of a conflict, but more than anything, I get what their situation is. So that's what I have to say about waiting for Rapid City. They will be a selfish community and not probably very interested in helping anybody around them. And I feel that when we've already spent the money to get this far, and yet we're going to put this aside because and not spend the money to try to go out, and we have the best people to go out and pursue these stakeholders right here in front of us, and we're going to put them off. I don't know how we explain to taxpayers how we just spent all this money on this, and honestly, we risk reputational damage as a group that spends taxpayer money if that's what we do.
I'd just like to comment. I think one of the reasons.
No. There's 3 other board members with their hand up. You wait at the line like everybody else.
I would like to call the question.
No, there's a member from the public that's had their hand up. We're not going to put up with this coarse crap tonight. There is a member from the public. You have not called on the public. You will do so, or you're violating public meeting laws.
Let's vote on. The question's been called. We need to vote on the.
No, you are violating in violation of public meeting laws, and I will have charges brought by Mark Vargo by not calling on a member of the public on a board member question.
Why are you looking at me? He's the one that made the motion.
It doesn't matter because you're the chair and you should realize the law. You either stay with the law or you violate the law. And at the end of the day, it's the person that violates it that gets charged. He can say what he wants, but you going along with it, you're the violator.
It's my understanding when the question's called.
No, not when there's a member of the public that's had their hand up the whole time.
We have to vote on whether the question's going to be called.
There is a member of the public, not me, the public. Get off your high horse. I'll acknowledge a member from the public if the chairman won't do so. Because I will not violate public meeting laws.
I'm going to call for a vote on calling the question. All in favor of calling the question indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Ma'am, would you come up to the podium?
All opposed say same sign. Aye.
I think we need to gain control of the meeting here, Mr. Chairman. My advice is that you allow the remaining few questions to be asked.
Well, let's vote. The question's been called. We need to vote on calling the question.
No, you are violating public meeting laws, which is South Dakota state statute. You may not do so. There is no law that says you are dictator-in-chief. You are a chairman of the board representing the state government. And if you cannot do so correctly, you can step down.
Is there an attorney in the office that can say what state law is?
South Dakota codified law, public meeting law. Look it up.
Well, if you got it on your.
I will absolutely pull it up.
If it's state law. It's a
state codified law.
But we have public comment at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
What's that?
No.
Public comment at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, we do have public comment at the end of the meeting, which.
And on voting issues, which you have not been calling on people for.
Do,
which I brought up at the last meeting.
Vote on calling the question.
Yes. All in favor of calling the question indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. No. Motion fails. All right. More discussion. Nathan.
Please call
Let me ask this, and then we'll get to you.
Could you identify yourself?
My name is Suzette Jovic.
Pardon me?
Suzette Jovic.
Okay, Suzette, just for the record. Thank you.
I wanted to comment on a couple of things here. So I keep hearing about timing, that the timing isn't right. I guess I don't understand that, as far as the timing not being right. Is the timing going to be right in 20 years when we have a significant drought and we're left scrambling? Is the timing right at that point? When is the timing right? I would argue that the timing, as was mentioned before, was right 10 years ago for many communities east of Rapid City. There are many communities right now that are struggling with their water supply. So many of whom could be served by a project like what we're talking about right here. So as far as the timing being right, we should be looking at doing this right now. When I was active duty years ago, I was stationed down south, and one of the sayings that I would hear down there was, "You get while the getting's good." Well, we've got a situation right now where we've got everything set up. We've got a great consultant. We've got a great leader. We've got people that have been involved in doing this type of work to set up systems in this very state. We've got the funds available to make this happen. And from my perspective, just like what Mr. Kaufman mentioned earlier, this project is exactly what this board was set up to do. This is what we're supposed to be doing. We are the West Dakota Water Development District. We're not the Water Quality District. We're not the Sedimentation Control District. We're not the South Dakota School of Mines Study District. We've had all of these projects that, since I've been here, have been interesting, but not necessary, and not in direct conformance with why this board was set up. In my 4 years, this is my last meeting tonight, in the 4 years that I've been here, this is the only project that I can say has a 100% perfect alignment with what our mission should be: to develop water, to bring water out to places that need water. And I don't understand what the problem is. I don't understand why there's any hesitation whatsoever. Why are we even hesitating about this? This is what we should be doing. This is what this board was set up by the state to do, to develop water, to bring water from places that have water to places that need water. Many other states have done similar things to what we're talking about here, including our sister state, North Dakota. North Dakota has pipelines, at least 3 major pipelines, going throughout their state right now. If they had waited until the timing was right, I'm guessing they'd probably have 0 pipelines right now. But they've got them, and they need them. And there are cities in the state of North Dakota that are benefiting from those pipelines right now. There are cities in the state of South Dakota that could benefit from this pipeline right now.
126, any pertinent interested person may be heard and present evidence. Violation is a misdemeanor. Schmuck.
A little civility would really be nice.
It would be.
If you don't agree with them, you don't have.
Yeah, you don't.
Well, I don't agree with people breaking the law.
But
I
But
quote
your
the law, he
terminology-
refuses to look it up. I gotta
your
sit here
terminology
and
could
candy
be
him
better.
through it.
Let's get back to the issue. Would you like to speak to the board?
As a taxpayer, I would like to know if this project doesn't qualify for funding. You are the water board. What kind of projects do get funded?
What kind of projects do get funded? Well, they've been a lot smaller in size. That maybe.
Planting grass on a hill.
She was not addressing the board, she didn't address just you.
Well, she's looking at.
People need water, and they're going to in the future. If you don't have water, things don't live. So, as a taxpayer, I would like my money to go to something worthwhile and logical for a water board to fund.
If I can respond, we have, since I've been on the board, we've done studies on the water quality in Rapid Creek, coming down to, we spent money on a dredge out Canyon Lake, and they're out there doing that right now. That was $150,000. I wasn't on the board then. But those are the kind of projects that we have been funded. We've helped out some smaller systems. The one with Keystone we just funded. They had a control issue, and the board funded that at our last meeting. So that was $15,000. This is, we get about $120,000 that's actually available for projects each year. We don't get a lot of money. So the projects, this is a big project, a huge project for us, and we're not a water user. We don't have water treatment plants. We don't have pipelines. Municipalities and small developments have their own infrastructure, and if they come to us with a problem and we think it's a good one to fund, then that's the kind of projects that we've been funding. This is a huge project.
And I think it's a good one.
I think in the long term it is too. I think right now there's things that are going on with people that are in our district. This 10,000 acre foot future use permit is for West Dakota Water Development District. And so the reason that we did the initial study is that we are, every 7 years, we re-up our future use permit. And in my opinion, it was something that we can show the Water Management Board that we are looking down the road and how to use that water.
I just don't think that, you can promise funds to be available when the time is right. Then there won't be funds available possibly. And still, you would have a problem. There would be a deficit of water to all of the communities in the area. So I would ask for you to reconsider and think about the decisions that you make today, how they're going to affect tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
And I don't disagree with anything you just said. I thought it was very well said. The concern that I have, though, when I say that this project could be in support of hundreds of thousands, we just voted last month for hundreds, $250,000 for a much smaller, and I understand that they were in our area, but $250,000 for septic. And I know it's way more complicated than that, but it's not going to be more complicated than that to the people that have no part of that $250,000. So yes, is this a lot of money? Completely agree. Don't disagree with that at all. But $250,000 is also a lot of money and more than our annual allotment.
It is. That's true. Yes, Gene.
To answer one of her questions too, this board decided to give $25,000 to plant grass on a hill for the School of Mines. Not a water project, not a development project, but we shelled it out.
Is there any more discussion? Anybody else in the audience? Okay.
I hate to ask him on this, but I'm still, this is for Dr. Chapman and the Banner folks. I'm still stuck on this deal where we don't have in your current proposal scope how to get an organization formed. That was part of the original $25,000 project, but we haven't got there yet. So how does that happen? Or when does it happen? And get all these people involved that have expressed an interest, and we get the city of Box Elder on board, and I mean, I just am stuck on that. It just doesn't seem like we're in the right sequence of events. That organization needs to be there so that then we can partner with it to serve these regional needs that are outside of our district, but yet we can be a good faith player, you know, in that regional project. I'm stuck on that.
And, you know, the original effort was, if possible, you know, get as far along as we have been able to do. And there's a broad consensus to move to that new organization. I will say that some of our entities, especially the tribes, have had really been hit hard with the COVID, and not all of the departments are open full out, you know, and that sort of thing. And ideally, we would like to bring people together in person to form that corporation. There was general discussion that in the first quarter of 2021 to look at forming it. And I would look to folks like Box Elder to, you know, and there's other stakeholders that you've all gotten to know, for those who have been going to those meetings, who are interested in having a corporation formed to continue to move that forward. And ideally, it would be done in the first quarter of 2021. But that's kind of where the dues part starts to come into play. But I don't know, as you said, it's pretty cheap to form a corporation. My hunch is that a handful of stakeholders would look to their own organization to put forward some funding to get a corporation formed with regard to that.
I have a question for Ben.
So,
Bob, do you have?
did I answer your question first? So.
Partly, yeah. So in the first quarter of 2021, but yet it's just sort of a hoped-for deal because of all the social distancing and
That's a
stress and all
challenge.
that kind of stuff.
I think it's a challenge. I do agree with that. But the idea is that there's some deadlines coming up to be, you know, to hit kind of targets to be able to get apply for getting on the state water plan. I think an application needs to be by late spring, kind of, but then it doesn't even get considered until
It's October.
October, right?
Yeah,
There's an initial application, though, I believe that.
It's October 1st.
Yeah. Okay.
it's a ways out.
So if work gets underway, you know, then we could keep that momentum going that's out there with regard to that. So.
You know, I'm leaning towards something that Mr. Mueller said earlier, is to piece this into pieces. You know, it's an awful big bite. It's almost 2 years of our expendable budget. I think it has value. But we're also going to consider another request in the next funding one for 2 years of our expendable budget. So that's 4 years of budget money we're going to consider in 2 consecutive actions tonight. 4 years. And we have a third of the board being replaced next month.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Banner real fast.
Go ahead.
Would Banner be willing to include in their estimate the incorporation cost to get the vote tonight? I know it costs less than $3,000.
Yeah, it's a small.
It's very small. It's probably less than that if you have your own lawyer on file. The filing cost is like $50 or $100.
Yeah, I mean, we would cover in that fee.
You guys would do that?
Obviously, we would get somebody on board. We don't do that.
It'd have to be,
Yeah.
we don't do it. It's a
Yeah.
legal thing to set it up, but it's not very costly.
But we can include that in
Yes.
the budget for next year, to include the incorporation cost?
We can, yeah.
So then we got all our ducks in a row.
You get your question answered. Are you through?
Until I think of the next one.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Bob. He's been had his hand up for a while. Then I'll go to you.
I just want to respond to Mr. Cope, because speaking from Box Elder's standpoint, we're in this kind of chicken and the egg thing, because you bring up a very good point. You want some answers. us on the other side as potential members, we have some things that we've asked questions of too that would get addressed within the needs assessment. So it's this kind of this balancing act of where do you make your commitment? We don't have the answers yet. You want answers? That's part of why they haven't got the response they want yet.
Okay, I'm gonna go way out on a limb here, and I'm gonna make a substitute motion.
Sure.
To fund Task 1, and to incorporate into Task 1 the formation of an organization that would actually be carrying this forward outside of West Dakota's boundaries, because we're really getting far afield of West Dakota's boundaries, and we can be a player and a good faith player in that, but I don't think that we can carry the load or the water on this deal until we have an organization who can in fact become financially, engaged as we go forward. So that's my substitute motion.
Is there a second? Seconded by Tom. Discussion on the substitute motion. We'll let, she wanted to talk earlier, so we'll let you go.
Glenda Williams, I'm a citizen. Keeping this ball rolling, I'm looking at the projects that have been funded recently. They're 24,500, 24,800. I know that you've got a resolution now that you'll need one vote if it's under 25,000. If it's more, then you need two. So I understand why you're doing one vote. It's easy to get these smaller projects done. I know this is a big project. Banner would be in this for the long run. But I have a question. I look at your savings account, and you have a 12-month CD for $200,000, $454. Okay, and a 24-month for $200,000. Is that funds that are available? If you could, at the end of the 12 months, I know if you take them out early, then you lose a little bit of interest or whatever, or capital or whatever. But I'm wondering now, you said that your budget is about $120,000 a year. Is that
That's
correct?
what we have after.
Yeah.
We get about $220.
But you've got like $400,000 in CDs.
We do.
So I think, waiting for Rapid City for another 8 months or whatever, they may never come on board. They may never say, like Wendy said, they don't care about the little towns around Rapid City. They only care about Rapid City. So, I mean, even if in 8 months they go, yeah, we're in, or yeah, we're not, they may say, yeah, we're in for $24,500. They may never come up with that much money anyway. So kicking this down the road with no guarantee, I would say just say Rapid City's not in. They may come in because they're going to see that they've got voters, they got people that have an interest. You might see those people show up. But you have a lot of money here. Why not use it for something that's a long-term project? Because, like it said, it's going to take years to get this going. Why don't you invest in that for the greater good? I mean, some of these little things, I really like the idea that, you're looking at the eco part, and they've gotten almost $50,000 from the city. But that's only benefiting a few people. We're talking all these surrounding, communities. And all these little tiny things are real easy to do, and you get them done, and you feel good. South Dakota School of Mines that I'm an alumni of, I like the fact that they're looking at grass and, retention of water and all that. But that isn't long-term. That isn't, in 20 years, if I'm going to be alive, I want to make sure my community is viable, that it's got water, that it can support all the people that want to live here now because of this COVID-19. We need to look, like James had a good point. We're 20 years ahead in 1 year in terms of water needs, or maybe it was 10 years. But I think, long term, you guys need to use this money. It's sitting here, I love getting interest on savings, but why don't we invest it in something that's going to do something for more of the community instead of just letting it sit there? And so I think you guys need to move this on. You've invested a great deal. I think that Banner has shown that they're the people that can move this on. They're a huge, reputable company in this city. They've been around for a long time. I don't think that they would bail out, but I hate to see them, at this point, lose out on an opportunity to help this community, and then we don't use their expertise that we've already used and invested a great deal of money in. So I think you need to look at this a little bit farther and look at these assets that you have. You've got a lot more money in the bank here that you could be using instead of just waiting to get $24,500 or $24,999.99 and give them all these little tiny projects. And thank you for letting me
Thank you.
comment.
Let me understand what your substitute motion is. So you're talking about that task one funding?
I'm talking, what my intent is to get kind of moving forward a little bit, kind of acknowledging what Mr. Kaufman and I talked about. The questions I've been asking Dr. Chapman about is how we get from no organization to something where we can become a partner in it and still show good faith effort that we're interested in it. So that's, I guess, task one, plus whatever it costs additional, whether it's another $5,000, to get this organization formed so that then we can move through that part of it, and then that organization can then become, part of what we would be partnering with if we go through task 2, 3, 4, and 5, or maybe we hit the wall. I don't know. Mr. Mueller indicated, in his experience, how you hit the wall sometimes. You've got to figure out what's going on instead of just going all the way through it. So I'm looking at it incrementally from my perspective, and reluctantly at that, because I'm still a little concerned about the whole deal. But that's my intent.
I got a question for Cheryl. Is that these tasks that you have identified, to add up to 219,590, are those tasks standalone?
Oh, no, they're broken out.
Yeah, they're broken out, but I mean, if we approve this substitute motion.
Yeah, it's listed in the attached scope of services, exactly the task we perform under task one. So you can break them out, and it is clearly defined what our scope would be to complete that task one.
Yeah, so it could be, we could vote on it, and that'd be standalone. We wouldn't have to look at those other.
Correct.
Other four tasks. What?
I guess, Mr. Coth, are we adding the cost of incorporation, or that would be, are you asking they include that in that task?
We need to include whatever that might be, and I'm going to allow Dr. Chapman to give us her best guess of what the additional needs to be over and above what's stated as the cost for task one. Or if it's nothing at all, really, just put it in there.
Well, how about if we just bill it as an expense, because we would just subcontract with somebody to do it.
Not to exceed?
Not to exceed 3,005.
10.
10? I don't think
Just
we'll
in
be
case.
clear. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Went from 3 to 10 pretty fast.
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know either.
How about we roll it in if it's so cheap, like James said?
I don't think it will be terribly
you
expensive.
took that away from them. They were willing to throw it in for free with the 200.
Yeah.
I'm not voting for the 200,
Yeah.
James.
I think 5,000.
I think that 5,000, not to exceed 5,000. Well, and then we'll just bill it at a cost.
Not to exceed 5,000
I'm
before.
okay with adding that in.
Could I just make one comment?
Sure.
All of those tasks are sequential, and the goal was to finish it all by September of 2021. If there's not continuity, just so you're aware, if there's not continuity, that deadline might be extended. Just want you to understand that part of it.
So,
I think that's fine.
Yeah.
so task one was, let's see, when was that supposed to be done then?
We don't have deadlines per task.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but for the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it was September.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
With the new motion, it would require 2 votes again, correct?
No.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, it would, because it's
It would?
25.
It would require 2 votes?
Yeah, it's over 25. And it's a new motion.
I think we're amending.
And the board's made it really clear, they think the new board should kill it.
Yeah, go ahead.
The agenda item doesn't specify an amount. So in my opinion, this is the second goal, but it's my opinion.
Because I can see.
Because I was told that, I knew that they were breaking this out into tasks, so I didn't want to So we didn't specify an amount on the agenda item, is what I'm saying.
What did we vote on?
What was the motion on the first vote? 219, wasn't it?
Oh, I see what you, okay.
The thing I don't,
Good point.
the thing I'm not sure about is if we approved 219,590 on the first vote, and we're amending that. What Mr. Close is suggesting, we amend that down. I would think that would be the second vote.
It is going down, so that helps. I mean, it's,
Still doesn't require a second
I guess
vote.
I'm looking here to see what we
It's a new motion.
actually did. Okay, we did specify 219,590 motion.
But we're voting on a lesser amount at this particular meeting. I would think this would be the second
I
vote.
would say you defer to the chair on that one. In my opinion, it's okay, but
I would agree with that. I think this was the second vote. It's just amended. Unless somebody has a heartburn with it.
So, I've got two recommendations here. One is, how about we have, or you entertain a motion after we're done with discussing this. I've got a question I want to ask Banner here about having the board decide whether or not this would be a second vote. I don't know if that's proper or not, but we would all be part of it at that point.
Oh, you mean after we do, after we
Yep,
vote on this?
after we're done discussing this, we can have a potential motion by the board to determine if this is a second vote. If we all agree that this is a second vote, then we can vote on the substitute motion.
Anybody have a comment on what he's suggesting?
No, I'll second that motion.
It's not a motion. It's just
Well, he motioned, we have a vote on it. It's a motion.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to vote to, okay, it's gonna be a two-part motion, I don't even think if this is just gonna work, but I'm worried about voting on the affirmative on this. If this goes as the affirmative, since we don't have it in the packet as a actionable item, to count this as a second vote, would it be a better solution to take a vote to say that it is or isn't for this one, and then vote on that, or am I making it too confusing? Or
I wonder if it would be better just to table this, vote on what you said, and then bring it off the table again, and then vote on it if people are happy. That's just a suggestion. Because we're kind of jumping to a different topic.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I would like to refer back to the original motion for a vote. Pending the outcome of that, we can entertain a substitute motion.
Well, we've got a substitute motion on the
You can
table.
refer back to the first.
I'm not following you. I'm not following that at all. Do you have another comment?
I just I had two things earlier. The second thing was I wanted to ask, rather than us dictating to Banner, I wanted to ask Banner what your thoughts are in regard to this. Would that make sense to you? Or would it work out better if task one was worked out? I mean, if we're starting to look at splitting this work up, would it be best to try to do task one and another task at the same time? Could it be done like this, in your opinion? Is this the best way to do it?
Allow me to refer to Joe and your thoughts on it.
If we just do task one at this point, as long as we continue on with the other tasks at a later date, we could complete task one and go and determine the needs of the area, and, you know, start the process, I guess, of this entire thing. But to get into the true financial impacts that the stakeholders or what you're really looking for, and what they're looking for, and what, you know, this is going to cost is ultimately what everybody wants to know at the end. We'll need to continue on to pass 2, 3, 4, and 5. But this is a step that we keep moving. It's the first step of the process, if that makes sense. So this is the first step of what needs to be done.
So to keep it flowing, like you guys talked about, with very little gap in the process, it would need to be carefully orchestrated on when you would come back and updates with this and this so that you can continue and keep it moving. Yeah.
I think the upshot is, whatever the board ultimately decides, we will look forward to working with you.
Us too.
Determine that this is a second vote.
Yeah, you just have to announce your opinion, and then the board can appeal that to the vote of the entire board. You need to be upheld or not.
Okay, thank you. No, really what was on the side. Yes?
I'd like to make a motion. The motion would be that we all agree that this is not a second, or that this is not a first vote on this project, that this would be viewed as a second vote if the dollar amount were less than what was originally indicated.
Hey, Mr. McGregor, he gave me some advice. As a chair, the chair can rule it that this is a second vote.
Okay.
And if there are board members that don't agree with that, you can appeal it, he said.
Okay.
So as a chair, I am going to make the decision that this is the second vote on this proposed substitute motion. Mr. Koth, is there any objections from the board members on that determination? Seeing none, I guess we're ready to vote.
Could I'll read the motion just to make sure. So this is substitute motion by Koth, seconded by Mack, to fund task 1 and include the incorporation effort for a total of $74,030. The additional cost of incorporation will be billed as a fee not to exceed $5,000.
That was my understanding. Is that Banner's? That's okay. So everybody understand what the substitute motion is? Seeing no more discussion, all in favor of the substitute motion indicate by saying aye.
Roll call.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, you want to go roll call? Okay, we're going to go roll call.
Roll call on the substitute motion, which I just read. Harris.
Aye.
Violata.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Nothigal.
Aye.
Jovic.
Aye.
Driscoll. No. Bierke.
Yes.
Koth. Aye. The motion carries.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very
It's kind of a
much.
long time, but we made it through it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Sure.
not to open up a can of worms, but would West Dakota be one of the incorporators? Is that your intent? Perhaps it's another agenda.
I would
item
say
at
that,
another meeting.
let's take it up at a different time. We're
Yeah.
already 8 o'clock.
Yeah, all right,
And
very good.
we got
Food
another.
for thought coming up.
Well, thank you all for coming, and for the public comment on this issue. It's a lot of money for us to spend, but it was some good discussion, and looks like we're heading.
You keep the
We're
ball
moving forward.
rolling. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
Chair, can we take a break?
Let's take a break. 10 minutes. That was good.